Welcome back to the program. Great to have you with me as always. All right, today is Thursday, State of the Union coming up tonight. President Biden's chance to show he's up for the job for the next 4 years by getting through without too many mistakes or too many stumbles or too many mumbles or too many freezes. As always, for every State of the Union, for every president, Dem or Republican, there's going to be lots of big, giant promises about the future. The State of the Union is supposed to be what the State of the Union is presently, related to what recently happened in the past, not about what's going to happen in 4 years or next year or how much spending there's going to be or any new legislative deals. Should be a simple speech by the president about the current state of the economy, households, businesses, international trade, international relations. That's about it. But it'll be much more than that. I expect this to be a relatively short speech, a simple speech in terms of syntax and sentence structure. And I expect a whole bunch of untruths. Can I call that misrepresentations? I don't want to use the L word, but guaranteed the president's going to claim he created the most jobs of any president in the history of America. That's going to be a lie. The jobs he's touting are the jobs that came back as a result of the economy reopening by the end of 2020, early 2021, of which he had no control. You're going to hear about how great his legislative actions have been. The American Recovery Act, the Infrastructure Bill, the CHIPS Act, the Inflation Reduction Act, which is not an Inflation Reduction Act, it's just a Green New Deal. And he's going to brag about those. And again, those were rubber stamped by Democrat majorities in the House and the Senate, and without any real governance, without any effort to live within our means. Those four deals resulted in trillions of dollars in national debt that we're still ratcheting up here in his third year. And I'll take a quick segue here. The U.S. Congress, House led by Mike Johnson, is fussing again with another continuing resolution, trying to race the clock for tomorrow before the government shuts down again. Remember now, our members of Congress are paid $175,000 a year, plus benefits, plus insider trading, to get a budget together by the end of September every year for the new fiscal year that starts October 1st. We haven't had that successfully done in probably 15 years, and we're failing again. Likely to be another rubber stamp on the budget process that was in place already from the failed effort last year. So fiscal year 2023, so think October 2022, and it's going to be a mess again. And Democrats are going to win and Republicans are going to lose because Republicans don't have the stomach to allow the government to shut down, which is really what needs to happen. We're going to have to balance our budget 1 year soon as a starting point for reducing debt, $34+ trillion in debt. Anyway, so President Biden's going to lie about the legislation, the impact on the economy. He's not going to talk about the costs, the poor governance, the lack of fiscal responsibility related to those bills. He's going to connect immigration to GDP. You may have heard this coming out from Democrats here for the last couple of weeks. Democrats have turned the narrative about the massive increase in illegal immigration, approaching 10 million persons in 3.5 years, a record in our history by far. And you're going to hear how this is great for the economy. And there's no denying population growth is good for nominal GDP. That is to say, people come into the country, in this case, these past 3 years, they're giving handouts, direct cash injections from the U.S. government, from states. Here, have this debit card with $10,000 on it. Here, have this debit card with $5,000 on it. Here, have this house, have this apartment, have this food, have this clothing. All very inflationary. And so nominal GDP, just because you increase population and then you go into debt to let them spend money, yes, GDP grows. But nominal GDP is not the measure we look at when we're evaluating the success of the economy. We look at real GDP and real GDP per capita. Real GDP is adjusted for inflation, and real GDP per capita is, of course, real GDP per person. And both of those are falling as a result of Biden's immigration policy. So on the nominal side, yes, no denying, but that is not a good measure, and it represents more inflationary pressures, increased demand, chasing out domestic consumers, citizen consumers. And so that's a horrible argument to make about nominal GDP and immigration. Real GDP will fall. Real GDP per capita will fall. No question about it. You're going to hear about a new plan from the president about constructing docks on the coast of the Gaza Strip in the Mediterranean to allow large ships to bring in humanitarian aid for the Palestinians. Unbelievable that they came up with this idea. This is not going to work. President Biden is so focused, and his team is so focused on electoral politics and winning again, that he is going to compromise the Jewish vote and Israel in order to placate Arabs and Muslims in the Michigan, Minnesota area, which represents some key electoral states. Building docks in the Mediterranean, temporary docks, by U.S. military personnel, claiming no boots on the ground in order to get aid into Palestinians. Palestinians deserve aid. They need aid, no question. But lots and lots of aid has been trying to get into the Gaza Strip, north, south, and in the middle for weeks now. And Egypt and Hamas are complicating this process. To the extent aid gets in, Hamas is taking the aid, taking control of the aid, not distributing it to the population. Remember now, Hamas is a terrorist organization, and the Biden administration is essentially going to be helping them. So we're helping the Israelis, and now we're helping Hamas. Now, I understand that this is really about the Palestinians, but Hamas is going to interrupt all that aid. Moreover, Arabs, Palestinians, Hamas affiliates have been stoning the large trucks that are taking aid into the Gaza Strip. You can see video after video online. Go to YouTube, go to Reddit, wherever you want to go. And these truckers are getting hurt. Their trucks are being destroyed. They can't be used again. Windshields are being blown out. And this is not about a lack of effort to get aid into the Palestinians in the Gaza Strip. This is a lack of control of that aid, and largely led by Hamas, the terrorist organization that controls the Gaza Strip. So it's going to be a well-watched State of the Union because people want to see if he can get through it without making too many mistakes. Hopefully, Republicans will behave themselves and not shout out and call out like we have seen in the recent past. There's going to be a large standing ovation by Democrats when the president enters the well of the House of Representatives to give a speech, because they want to demonstrate unity and how great they think this president is. You can hear Democrat pundits on TV claiming they've never seen Joe Biden sharper or more in control or more able to lead. And we can all see with our own eyes that's not the case. On that same theme, President Trump I'm not a big fan of doing that. Once you leave office, you lose your title. I have to keep reminding myself not to call former elected officials president or senator or congressman or governor. We have to stop that. Once you're out of office, you lose your title. Donald Trump has challenged President Biden to debates here in 2024. The Biden administration put out a snarky reply. We're focused on the economy and the State of the Union tonight. We'll get to that when the time is right. I will suggest now here on the 7th of March that President Biden will not debate Donald Trump live on TV. No way. Can't do it. They won't allow it to happen. If I'm wrong, it'll be great theater. But I suspect for the first time that we will not have a presidential debate with an incumbent president. Now, part of that snarky response they had to Donald Trump's challenge to a debate is that they basically are saying, well, Donald Trump didn't debate his Republican opponents in the primary, so why should President Biden debate Donald Trump in the presidential election? Well, first of all, it's the presidential general election, first of all. The degree of importance is off the scales compared to a primary debate. And moreover, honestly, President Trump didn't need to. This is the biggest primary win ever, the earliest primary win ever. It's going to be the longest general election we've had. And no one's ever done that well on a Super Tuesday. No one's ever went 8 straight. So there was really no need. I did call for Donald Trump to debate during the primary process, and I think he should have. People that shy away from debates are afraid of debates. There's no denying that. And I think that holds as well. President Trump didn't want to damage himself or be damaged by the others mocking him or getting down on him. So we'll see about this, but you hear my prediction on March 7th. President Biden will not debate Donald Trump live on TV. Other news that got my attention today was John Kerry, who's leaving the Biden administration as his global warming czar. And some funny things were said today. John Kerry actually said, you could search this out, he actually said live in his address, his closing address, that the world would look much more kindly on Russia's invasion of Ukraine, the ongoing war there, if Russia would simply comply with the world's efforts to fight global warming by reducing fossil fuel emissions. Literally said those words. If Russia were to reduce its fossil fuel emissions and carbon emissions, then the world will feel better about their slaughter of Ukrainians in Ukraine in the southeastern part of the country. Stunning. He praised China, the largest user of coal as a source of electricity on the planet and ready to build many, many more megawatts of coal producing power plants. And John Kerry praised China because they also make lots of green energy stuff. And what he's really referring to there are windmills, solar panels, and electric vehicles. The windmills go to foreign nations that claim they would create domestic jobs, but those windmills are going to be made in China. The solar panels made in China, again, were jobs that were supposed to go to domestic economies like the US that did not. And the EV market is flooded. Chinese are rejecting EVs. They have a huge surplus of EVs, and they want to dump them onto the rest of the world, and they're cheap and not long lasting. Just stunning that John Kerry could say this stuff. Also today, I see California, the legislature in California is putting a bill together to provide to illegal immigrants, non-citizens, mind you. Now listen to this, non-citizens, they're going to get 0% interest rate loans with no down payment to buy homes. 0% down, no interest rate charged on a loan to buy a home, because owning a home is a step to creating wealth. Absolutely stunning. The unfairness, the disrespect for American citizens, the people of California who are struggling, who are renting, real citizens, Black, Hispanic, Asian, no, not for them. But for illegal immigrants, no down payment, 0% interest on home loans. Absolutely stunning. Talk about inflationary, just remarkable. And then lastly, as we always do, let's check in on the economy. I spoke to you on Tuesday. Check in some data from Wednesday. As always, every Wednesday morning at 7 a.m., we get the MBA mortgage applications, the Mortgage Bankers Association. How many mortgage loans were applied for, either for new homes or for refinancings? Week over week for the week ending March 2nd, last Saturday, up 9.7%. Good number. Mostly refis there. Surprised by that. And that was compared to minus 5.6% in the prior week. Average 30-year mortgage rate now 7.02%, so still very elevated, though down a couple basis points from the prior week also. Also, yesterday on Wednesday, 8:15, we had the ADP non-farm employment change. This is the private check writing company, ADP. They have unique insights into the hiring and firing of U.S. workers. Net job growth for the month of February, 140,000. Worse than expected, but a little higher than the prior month in January. This is a precursor to the employment situation report that comes out Friday, where we get net job growth for the month of February from the government. We have the household survey and the establishment survey. We get net job growth, average hourly earnings, a narrow measure of unemployment called U3, a broad measure of unemployment called U6, and the average hours worked. Always gets the world's attention. That comes out at 8:30 on Friday. That's all the data we had for Wednesday. Today, Thursday, every Thursday at 8:30 a.m., we get the initial jobless claims. How many of our fellow Americans lost their job last week and filed for initial unemployment claims insurance? Again, that was for the week ending March 2nd, last Saturday. 217,000 versus 217,000 expected versus 217,000 in the prior week. I am claiming manipulation on this data point. Initial unemployment claims have been pegged at lows from the 1970s for months and months and months. We have heard layoffs after layoffs announced across the country, big layoffs, big companies, small companies, and it's not showing up in the claims data. I'm claiming something is fugazi here in the claims data. Something's being manipulated. Either it's at the state level or at the federal level. But this data is not reflective of the real state of unemployment, or excuse me, unemployment insurance usage in the economy right now, or the number of actual unemployed. Also today, we had non-farm productivity for the fourth quarter, final revision, up 3.2%. Good number, a little better than expected, about the same as it was in Q3. Non-farm productivity, output per worker hour. Productivity is a key measure of wealth creation and per capita incomes. And with that comes unit labor costs, also for Q4, up 0.4%, a little better than expected, 0.7%, and a touchdown from 0.5% in Q3. Good news there. This might give the Fed a touch of hope, or ray of hope, that they'll be able to lower rates sometime in 2024. But the data I've just recited to you doesn't change too much in terms of Fed actions when it comes to their March and June meetings. Expect the Fed to remain on hold. Actually, you know what? It just occurs to me that they have a meeting April-May, the 30th of April to the 1st of May. And I think that meeting will be on hold as well. I think they're on hold at least through June. Of course, we get lots of data between now and then. Of course, data on Friday, the employment situation report data will indicate some of that as well. All right, let's quickly check in on markets for the day. S&P 500, guess what? Another record high, 5,157, up 52 points today. That's enough now. The bubble is getting too big. Don't put new money to work up here. This is a half a dozen to a dozen companies driving these indexes higher. NVIDIA is really the driving force. PE ratios are skyrocketing. Earnings were pretty good in the fourth quarter, but not this good. Dow Jones Industrial Average 38,791, up 130. Let's check in on fixed income, the yield curve for the United States economy. We checked the benchmark, the 10-year bond, 4.09%, down 2 basis points since yesterday, down 7 basis points since Tuesday when I last spoke to you. When stocks rally, bonds rally, which means interest rates fall. We can impugn a rate of return from the stock market that we can match to the bond market. And so anyway, interest rates are falling and stocks continue to rise. We don't want to see the 10-year back below 4%. 30-year, 4.247%. The 3-month at 5.381. See that inversion? The 3-month money will cost you 5.38%. 10-year money, 4.9%, 4.09%, excuse me. That's quite an inverted yield curve. And keep in mind now, the federal funds rate is 5.25% to 5.55%, well above the 10-year rate as well. So that inversion is not helpful. Oil, NYMEX, West Texas Intermediate, WTI, 79.04, down 9 cents on the day. Nat gas, $1.78, down 14 cents on the day. Gold, new high, 2,166, up $8.50. Silver rallies. One thing you want to pay attention to is cocoa. Cocoa is near record highs, and supplies are really at risk. If you're a chocolate person, get ready. You're going to be paying a lot more for chocolate if you can get it at all. Checking in on the dollar, US dollar index, 102.82, down small, down 55 points. Dollar yen down 148.03 as the economy in Japan looks like it's actually growing. And so people sold dollar yen today on the back of speculation that the BOJ, the Bank of Japan, will begin to hike rates and eliminate once and for all negative interest rates on the yield curve. Against the euro, dollar 109.50, up 50 points. Still well within ranges of strong dollar world. And against the British pound sterling, 128.10, up 80 points. Dollar a little weak, but still you buy dips in the dollar. You sell rallies in equities, you buy dips in the dollar. You sell rallies in bonds, and you buy dips in commodities. The Dow Jones Commodity Index rallied since Wednesday, coming off of levels of 955 up to 965.33. Had a high on the week of 968. The low was on Monday at 949. So again, that's the call to buy dips in commodities. And we take a look at some key commodities. I already talked about oil, already talked about natural gas. Platinum rallied today, $924.20, up $10. Copper, $392, up 50 cents. Lumber rallied today. Soybeans rallied today. Coffee rallied today. Coffee, $190 per ton. Cotton, $99.25. Cocoa, $6,475 per ton. Down $74 today, but again, at all-time highs. Live cattle, $188, up $1.50. Feeder cattle, $256.52, up 65. Inflation is not going away. The Fed cannot stop. And again, I remind you, the fiscal side is doing nothing to help inflation. Inflation is driven, to the extent inflation is falling, so second derivative is negative. First derivative is still positive. Inflation is still around 3.5% at the consumer level, about 2.5% at the producer level. We get the credit. That is consumers who are changing our consumption habits, and of course, the Federal Reserve for raising interest rates to slow down the economy. The fiscal side, President Biden gets nothing. Coming back to the start of my podcast here today in the State of the Union, President Biden is also going to try and give himself congratulations and credit for falling inflation. This is called disinflation. So the rate of inflation is falling, but the price level is still rising. And he does not deserve any credit. I mentioned this to you on Tuesday. They'll cite the American Recovery Act, I believe it was, where they claim that they're reducing drug prices. And that's really all they have in terms of their effort to reduce inflation. They get no credit at all because we're trillions of dollars in debt. They keep spending. Governors, Democrat governors, blue state governors keep spending, keep doling out money to individuals. Just horrific. All right, one last thing I want to mention is who's going to run on what in 2024? The Biden administration, by the way, just I'm thinking about it, State of the Union tonight, there'll be plenty of talk about abortion. For sure. That may be a key emphasis about abortion rights. President Biden's going to run against Donald Trump on abortion rights. Donald Trump is a horrible human being, is going to be a dictator, and is a threat to democracy. And Bidenomics. That's their plan. It's going to be primarily abortion and Trump. Republicans, Donald Trump has a far easier time of it. Unchecked illegal immigration, open border policy by President Biden. Inflation, President Biden. Defund the police across the country in major cities. Crime is skyrocketing. Decay is everywhere. They're going to run against the Ukraine debacle. Israel, Hamas, China. They're going to talk about the malaise in the economy. They're going to talk about the low approval rating for President Biden. They're going to talk about the clamping down on America's energy production. And I think the Republicans have the easier task of challenging their opponents than the Democrats do of challenging their opponents. All right, that's all I have for you today. As always, try to buy American.